I sent 2 emails today about about this meeting. One was talking about some other things, and then one was just the link. Did any of you get both of those emails?
I got both.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, and I would like to know on the Canvas page that I have, there is a window that says something about, let's see if I can find it, Microsoft Teams meetings. And that is something that everybody should have in their Canvas interface. And the meetings should be on there, but I don't, has anybody had them so that they show up at all, other than the emails I send? Because if not, that's something that I've got to deal with the tech guys.
On mine, it's not showing up in the Microsoft Teams meeting or Teams classes.
Okay.
So under the meeting one, it just looks like nothing is scheduled, like it's not showing up as part of the team meeting.
Okay. And it should also be showing up automatically in your calendar, in your Teams page. If it's not showing up on Canvas, is it showing up on the calendar at all? On your Teams calendar?
I don't know if it'll let me look at the calendar when I'm in the meeting. Oh, wait, no, there it is. No.
Okay. That's something we're going to have to, if one of you guys would be willing to talk to tech support and see why our class isn't showing up in their calendar, I'd appreciate that. And I will also contact them and see what I can do so you guys have more ways of connecting with the meeting. That's just something that it's interesting to me because this is a miracle app that we're working with, but it's only a miracle until it stops working the way you want it to, and then it becomes irritating. So has everybody had a pretty decent week and weekend?
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, just my kids all have their end of school activities, so it's been crazy for us at least.
Well, that stands to reason. And Lynette, you're at a concert. I'm assuming it's for a family member who's also, this is the end of year activities. Is that right?
She plays the French horn. She's so good. They're doing Phantom of the Opera later tonight. I'm very excited.
Oh, that sounds fun. Well, before we dive into things, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be going over. We have a couple examples of the photography for the little house that everybody made. We're going to be talking about the next sculpture that everybody's making, which is the wire. We're going to be talking a little bit about the annotated bibliography that's coming up in a couple weeks, as well as the service learning. Now, and before we get into that, I'll find out, which of you are doing the service learning path. Then I wanted to talk briefly about artistic critique and give an example of that. And then we will also be talking about being a diversity collaborator. And so I think all those things, there's several things to talk about, but I think we'll be able to get it just fine. And if you see my eyes wandering, it's because I'm trying to manipulate things on my screen. All right, I think that's good. And before we launch into that, do any of you have any questions about our first week and the first part of the class so far? Have all of you been able to get your kits? My screen has frozen up. Okay, Camden, you said you got yours. Excellent. Anybody else? Did anybody else get their kits?
Of paper and hot glue and popsicle sticks, so I've already started on the project.
All right, were you able to get your kit?
All the stuff. I'm gonna get it tomorrow when I'm on campus.
Okay, all right, good. How about you, Sylvia and Whitley? Have you been able to get your kits?
Yeah, I got mine a couple weeks
Okay.
ago.
All right. Yeah, I believe I remember you telling me that. And how about you, Sylvia? Have you gotten your kit?
Sorry, my mic was not letting me unmute. But yeah, I did get my kit.
Okay, excellent, very good. So, Lynette, you're working with stuff that you've already have until you get your get on campus and grab your kit. Who had a hard time finding where those kits were? Was it pretty simple, or was it a struggle?
I had a hard time finding it, but I think that was my error. I was the one who texted you saying that it was like saying that I couldn't find it, but then I was just on the wrong side of the building. But
Well, yeah,
once I
that's
drove
right.
back that way, I found it. So
Yeah, as soon as you found the right side of the building, I remember you got it almost immediately.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
was right there. So
excellent. And the reason I'm asking is that it looks like there are 4 kits left, which if you're already in the class, hopefully everybody's already picked them up. So if whoever listens to this later who has not gotten their kit, make sure you grab it right away. Um, and it looks like most of them have been picked up without any problems at all, which is great. That kit, Jason and I, when we first started the 3D design classes, that was a hard thing to put together because we kept fiddling and figuring and around what we needed to do to get as much stuff as possible for your lab fee. And Jason is, I don't know if you guys get up on campus and meet him in person. Jason Lanigan is, he's freakishly talented. He was able to get a lot more value in that kit than I would have imagined. So it's a really good resource. And I think what I would suggest is as you do stuff, feel free to add your own things to it. If you need to work with pipe cleaners, other textures, grass and leaves, or things you find, buttons, it doesn't matter. Add whatever you need to that kit. It is really good as a base. For this next project, after that we're done with the house, the wire, I've had the wire in the kit is really good, but I've also had people supplement that with things like copper reinforcing wire from hardware stores, as well as baling wire from Intermountain Farmers, and other things like that. Even twist ties. And one person was they had a collection in their basement of the really antique phones. I say really antique. The phones that I grew up with that had the wire inside them that we used to strip out and make things with. Uh, there's a lot of different kinds of things that you can do to add to that kit. That makes it really enjoyable. But if you guys have no questions about what's been going on so far, what I would like to do is show just a couple images of what people have done already. I think a couple people have turned things in, and I think you'll enjoy these. And it really makes me happy because I think I was telling you some of the really bad examples of houses in the past. So far, nobody's turned in a really bad example. So keep that up. Excellent score. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, this is the discussion board. And I'm going to come back and talk about this really quick too. But I wanted to show these images and see what you guys think about them. So this is from Emily. I'm just going to show the images and then I'm going to go back and comment on them. Then Taylor had some really good comments to make. And then this is from Whitley. I like blue. All right. Now there's another one too that I want to that somebody turned in that they have not put on this that looks really good as well. And some of the things I want to point out are on this, you can see the structure of the house is pretty sturdy. And we don't see a lot of really clear pictures of the house except for this. There's a lot of interesting things going on with texture and stuff like that, open doors, things inside. This kind of thing I like because it makes it's sturdy and it makes it so it's interesting to photograph. And that's the big thing for this assignment. And with this photo, there's a light source inside of the little teeny house itself with items around it from a house to give scale. Then we have a couple different scales of toys. And instead of the house being in focus, this is in focus. I think that makes for an interesting photo. Here we have an interesting view where it comes from the roof looking down. I think that's really fascinating. This is looped to what looks like laundry bags or garment bags. And then this is directly over the roof, which is an interesting image. And the reason why I think these are fascinating is because the photos look like art pieces themselves. And I think that's really interesting. When we go here, the home design is sturdy. Whitley, did you find this online? Or did you make it and cut it out yourself?
I found the template online. I don't know if that was like the right thing to do, but like I had like a bigger picture in my head, like why I printed it out. So that's kind of why I went with like a template.
Well, it looks like your daughter helped you
Yep.
do the
Yep. She wants to help all the time. So I thought, why not just run with it? And
well, I think that this is interesting because right here, the house has become like a sculptural thing,
mhm,
and here it's become more of a conceptual thing. I think
yeah,
that's really an interesting idea.
yeah,
So we have, even though we're looking at the front and we're looking at the front, they're very different settings, and we have them on play equipment. We have this and pull back onto a crib, and we have somebody holding it. I think that these are really fun ways of interacting with that house.
that's the
I think
little artist herself. So I figured I could get a shot of her holding it.
that's great. Now I want to go back and let's see. I'm going to see if I can find an image of the third house that was turned in. Let's see. And Whitley, did you already turn this in on the house itself, the house assignment itself, or just in the discussion so far?
I think I turned it in on the house assignment itself. I think I did both.
Okay. Because the house assignment is showing only two. Let me see if I can. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get this. Okay, there's only there's only there's this house, and then the house I'll show you in just a sec that's on the sculpture-based photography submission area. So Whitley, it did not, for whatever reason, it did not register when you
Okay.
submitted that.
Okay. So it's under the sculpture-based photography
Right.
link?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a sculpture-based photography assignment, and then
Okay.
at the bottom, yeah. Let's see. I was trying to share something and it screwed up. It didn't screw up. There was some user error there. So give me just a second here. All right, so the assignment, I wanted to just again show some of these cool images that students have done in the past with really fun houses and fun settings. And I like the fact, do you remember I was telling you about the one that I did not particularly like, where the person set it up on the ground and then just walked around it, taking 5 photos from different points walking around. And what I'm seeing from what you guys are doing is that you are taking images of the house, um, in very different settings, and I really appreciate that. So this is what Taylor turned in, and this is another house. She did some of the same kinds of things, taking it shots from above. I don't know if I can. Let's see. I'm trying to show you some of the other images that Taylor did. Yeah, so, and I think it's kind of fun to see this where we do have some very different images. So there's, for this assignment, oh no, did I block it off? Can you guys see this image of the house?
I just see you. I don't think your screen's sharing.
That is aggravating. Okay. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
All right. And I wanted to walk through the assignment really quickly again, because in this module, and this is going to be true of a lot of the different modules, because we are online and we don't meet in person, it becomes a little bit of a challenge sometimes to share our work with each other. And I want to just walk through this really quick and talk about it. For this sculpture-based photography, we have a brief introduction. A lot of the modules have an introduction, but then we have a reading. It tells you what chapters to read, and sometimes it has it, sometimes it doesn't. But the quiz will always mention which chapters to read through. Did anybody, and everybody's done a really good job on the quiz. Did anybody have a struggle with access to the text or anything like that for those quizzes? Has that worked out for everybody?
Worked for me.
Okay, good. Did anybody, one of you guys bought the book on, I think for eBay for like less than $7 or something? Did it come already, and were you able to use that for the quiz? This is for Sylvia, Camden, or Lynette.
I did mine on the archive.org.
Okay, all right. You guys got access to it. I wanted to mention about the quiz again. Each quiz has 2 or 3 questions that are specific to the text. And I can always tell when somebody is not using the text because the answer will sound right in any other setting, but it's not right for the quiz. And so it's important to use that. And what I've seen with the quizzes that I've gotten and graded, people have been pretty good about that. So that's one assignment. And then We have here the background artist review. So the artist review is something everybody's been doing a good job on that. Excellent. And then the assignments to turn in addition to the artist review and the quiz, are with the sculpture-based photography. That's where you take photos and submit the photos. Then the discussion, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. And that's where you submit your photos and then other people also comment on it. So you need to do both of those. And then you'll also, the work log, I separated it out. You do have it for this, but everybody will need to turn in their work log as well. And again, and you remember what the department mandate about the work log, whether or not it makes sense to you, we've got to do it anyway. And now I hope that makes sense what we just went over to briefly, but I want to specifically focus in on the discussion aspect, because each of these modules will have a discussion, but most of them, you get your points just for submitting images of the work that you did. And then there's a few, like towards the end when we talk about contemporary processes, that's when you'll need to write a little bit more as well and share what you've already turned in, just so everybody can see what you're doing. And then this first discussion, what I need you to talk specifically about the work of 3 other students. And for the discussions, a couple of the things, I don't know, have any of you had art classes where you had to submit images of your work for the discussion boards?
I took one last semester. I think it was Art 1120.
Okay.
Just 2D art, and we did have to upload and then respond with a video critique.
Okay. And
So
I'm not going to thank you. I'm glad that you had that experience, because that put you a leg up with from other people. I'm not going to. I don't know. You probably love. Everybody probably loves being on video. I can't stand it, and so
no, I hated it. That was the worst.
Okay, because so we are just going to be doing a written critique for these that require the critiques, and the critiques are not very long. And I wanted to talk about that, walk through it really quickly, and then we will be talking about the tools of artistic critique, and I will give an example of what a critique actually is. So for the discussion, what you'll do, just like Whitley in that class you had earlier, you'll be submitting your images. But then after submitting your images, you'll be looking at what other people have done. And you will need to pick 3 of your fellow students' work and write a critique that's at least 45 words long. Now, typically an average is about 5 to 8 words a sentence. So your critique is going to be anywhere from 6 to 15 sentences, or 6 to 9 sentences long, something like that. 6 to 8. So it's not going to be very long. It's maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs or a long paragraph. But in your critique of 3 other students, you're going to be addressing each of these 3 points. First point is, how did it involve the viewer? And that could be as simple as, some of these, we looked at one where the person focused on a toy rather than the house. And another one, we looked at a little girl holding the house, which as soon as you have a person interacting with the item that's being photographed, that requires people to insert themselves somehow into it. So they definitely involve the viewer. So either of those, but you will just need to talk about how it involves the viewer. And remember there were those 9, or no, how many was it? 7 or 9 elements of how to involve a viewer, and you had to comment on 5 of them. Then B, the second part of your critique that you're going to be doing is just talking about how the house structure was different in the photos. In this one, you could talk about how an image was captured where the only light source was from inside the house, or and somebody else, the person, instead of just walking around it, had in several different settings so that in some, the house appeared to be in tiny scale and some in large scale, and that's great. And then the third one, how did the varying the focal point, depth of field, and viewpoint in the pieces change? And so, think about those things and just write 45 words, about 6 to 9 sentences about what you see. And that's basically what you need to do. And if you go back to the beginning, or rather the home page, excuse me. I'm going to share this tab. We go to the home page, we go to course overview, and we look at tools of artistic critique. Open that up. This is something that everybody was supposed to read last week. These, I want you to be thinking about them, and I'll go over it with one of these images of one of the houses in just a short bit. And when you write your large paragraph critiquing each of 3 other students' works, you're going to be referencing these 4 tools of artistic critique: description, analysis, interpretation, and judgment. One of the things that I'm going to whine for a little bit now. I hope you guys don't mind. One of the things that I find really disheartening is we don't use words today the way that they actually mean many times. And I think a big part of that is because we're not used to being around words the way that they're, when they're used the way they mean. When I say critique or critic, what is the first emotional response that you have to that word? And I'd like to hear from a couple different people. Sylvia or Camden, what is your first reaction to a word like critique or critic or critical? Is it a positive or a negative reaction? Okay, Camden says negative. It mostly feels antagonistic. Yeah, excellent. Very good. How about you, Sylvia? What's your first reaction? I'm sorry, could you type it into chat? Because it looks like that the microphone's not working. My chihuahua is talking to me and wants to come up on the couch. Okay, Sylvia says at first it's a negative thing, but then I think about it a little bit more. When we hear things like critical and critique, we have been trained so much to the point where if somebody talks about, give this piece of critique, you're expecting to hear them complain about it or point out all the flaws, which I think is really silly and sad because, as Sylvia was saying, critique should not necessarily be a negative thing, even though we're trained to believe it is. What critique actually means, or critical, is with intent. It means on purpose. So when we're doing critical speaking or critical thinking, we're thinking with purpose. We're using our words carefully, and we're trying to be precise in how we communicate. It is not meant to be a negative thing at all. And those 4 tools of artistic critique, I think, are really important for everybody to go and reread. And I will edit the discussion, so we have a link to that on the discussion again. But those 4 tools are designed to help us think through the process of observing something and being able to talk about it. They are not designed to hurt anybody's feelings. The 4 tools or the 4 steps are describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. And I'll just go through this. We talked briefly about them last week, but I'll look at this blue house with the white roof and go through each of the steps. The first step, describe, I'm just going to be talking about essentially the physical manifestation of whatever the object is. For example, this looks to be like a creatively built model of a house with perhaps blue popsicle sticks put in place. It almost looks like slats, horizontal slats on the house. There's a lot of white where we have door and window frames and the roof line. We have white on each of the vertical corners as well on the edges of the roof line. It is not designed to mimic a practical house. It looks like one of those playhouses you find in some people's backyards, for the grandkids and stuff. It looks to be, maybe it's about 5-6 inches tall at the most, and maybe 3 or 4 inches wide. So it's not very big at all. I see the two big window frames over the front door, and I'm assuming it's the front door. Each have 6 glass panes in there that are drawn in place. And then you have the little white areas lower down on the sides. And it's designed to look like a model of a house that's almost practical, but we know that the proportions are a little bit off. So in that process of description, I'm just talking about the physical presence of the house. Now, when I talk about analyze, this is where we talk about how we think it was put together. And analyzing this, I got into that a little bit in the discussion. Those horizontal slats on the walls look to me like they are popsicle sticks that are dyed blue. It looks like cardboard was perhaps spray painted white and cut for the roof, for the horizontal sections of the roof to give it a little bit of that thatching kind of feeling. For the vertical corners around the house, covering up the ends of the popsicle sticks. It looks like the white cardboard was cut into different shapes and then painted on top, perhaps a little bit too. And that's where we get the brown panes, those 2 sets of 6 brown panes on those 2 windows above what I'm assuming is the front door. And then cardboard was cut in a little circle and made into a doorknob kind of space for that arch-top door as well. So, and you see that I'm kind of guessing and figuring out a little bit about how the person put it together. Now, the third step, interpret. This is a little bit more difficult because I can kind of guess, I can analyze how it was assembled because I've done stuff like that. All of us have worked with cardboard. All of us know what popsicle sticks are. We've worked with paint before. We can kind of appreciate that. But I don't know this. At least I haven't spoken to this person while they were building this, so I can't really speak definitively to a strong interpretation of what this object might be. But I can extrapolate some things. The fact that this is not an architectural model meant as a high-end display piece tells me that the artist is having a little bit of fun with it, and it feels like that. All the angles aren't precise. You see on the side right, well, from our perspective, the right-hand side of the front door, there are those 2 horizontal pieces of white cardboard. The top one is cut a little bit out of whack, and you see that the roof line is just a little bit different than totally straight. Although everything is carefully crafted, it's all just a little bit out of perfect alignment in such a way that where it doesn't feel sloppy. It feels like it's been intentionally designed to be engaging, to be a little bit fun. And the colors are don't feel like they are meant to be confrontational. They're meant to be calming, soothing. And have that kind of cute grandma in the woods kind of look without being intimidating. The door, the fact that the door has a curved top to it is a little bit unusual. And I think that that kind of ties in with the atmosphere of the rest of this small structure, where it has that kind of flavor of engaging humor, where it's not, slap your knee, roll on the floor, laughing kind of humor, but it's just enough so that the artist knows that you kind of appreciate that they're making a toy house. And I really, and I think that that's perhaps speaks to a worldview that still allows for things like humor and personal engagement with other people. So I like that. It invites me in as a viewer into the structure. And then the fourth step is evaluation. Is it successful? Well, the parameters of the assignment are to build a house that is stable and looks well crafted. And I think that this does fit with those parameters. So I think that this is successful. And that is just a walkthrough of what a critique is going to be. And I wanted to talk about that briefly as well. If you look at the module, you will notice that underneath being a diversity collaborator is a module labeled Applying the Tools of Artistic Critique. And with the tools of artistic critique, that's what we are going to be doing. And I'm going to share this with you really quickly. But it's more than just this assignment that we're talking about. Those 4 tools, did everybody see what was going on as I was going through those list of 4 steps? At any point, did it sound like I was being harsh or nasty or telling everybody where the person screwed up?
No, I didn't get that at all.
No, but I hope I tried to be as clear as possible that it is intentional thinking and it's intentional observation and it's trying to be precise in communication about what we're seeing. And I hope that came across. That's the kind of thing that we want to do as we critique something, not talk about how it's screwed up or how a person screwed up. I don't like that attitude anyway, because we are told, oh, but that's to help the person be better. Well, okay, if they shared your brain, maybe, but there's no way of knowing the intent of somebody else, and there's no way of knowing what their process is or what their end goal is in a piece. And so all we can do is guess at it, but I don't know. From my perspective, since I know what the assignment is and I've tried to describe it and we've talked about it, I can talk about how things approach successful completion of the assignment or not, but I can't really talk about whether or not you as an artist were successful in realizing the vision that you had. I can talk about how successfully I feel that perhaps something was communicated to me. And so I find it difficult to justify telling somebody that they screwed up unless you're the person who made the assignment that they're trying to follow. And that's why I think it's important to remember that the shift for criticism and artistic critique in this class is all the way towards intentional thinking and intentional communication. If we look at this blue house and I say, yeah, it's a blue house, it's cute. Who cares? Who wants to hear that? If you're the artist, though, and we're looking at it, I think it's a lot more effective if I can tell you, oh, I really appreciate the time you took. It looks like these popsicles were painted probably with like a watercolor marker, and I can see that took a significant amount of time. Whether or not I'm saying, you're a fantastic human being, what you've heard is precisely what I've described, which is the care that I see taken into building the popsicle slats for the house. and acknowledging that. And I think acknowledging that work that somebody else does is so much better critically or intentionally than if you just say, oh, that's pretty. Because I think that's almost a waste of breath. And as we go through the semester, every one of the projects, we will have moments where we talk about and use our artistic critique skills to kind of hone in on that. And I hope that you'll find that it will apply to most of the things that you do. If we look again on our the home page with all the modules in it, go down below being a diversity coordinator, we see the applying the tools of artistic critique. Now notice that these are not going to be due until the first part of August, but you will get extra credit if you do it within the next 8 weeks. You know, if you do it a month early, you will get extra credit. I guess closer to 6 weeks. What this is, and I recommend that you go to critiques from the class, go to that link. This has critiques from another class and just see what people are doing. And I'm sorry, Whitley, this will be on video, but how you make the video is different than what you're expecting. What you're going to be doing is this is why I have you post your pieces on the discussion panel so that everybody can see the work that you've done. Because when you go do your artistic critique for your own work and somebody else's work, what you're going to be doing is going to that discussion, finding an image of somebody's work or your own work, and you're going to train your camera on that if you're using a phone, or you could do this as a Teams meeting with only yourself present. You're going to share the screen, share that image, and then you'll talk about it so that the image of the object that we're critiquing is the only thing that people see. So you are going to be needing to talk about it, and you'll talk for about 3 to 5 minutes going through the tools of artistic critique. Let's see, I'm going to go to that page that I have critiques from the class and click on the link and then show you what this link looks like. So you can see what other people have done. Oh no, it says something went wrong. That's frustrating. Okay, let me see if I can find this and okay, yeah, if that link is not working, that's frustrating, so I will open it up and I'll show you what the link is supposed to look like.
While we're on the subject of things not working, those photos, I emailed you about the photos of the wire sculpture. They're still not loading in Canvas. Like it's still just like a little blue square with a question mark in it.
Yeah, and I don't understand that because I went through and I've double checked it 3 times so far, and from my end, everything is showing up. And so I don't know what's going on. The only thing I can suggest is I would like Sylvia Camden and Lynette, if you guys wouldn't mind looking through that module, at least the first one, and seeing those images, see if you guys can open the images. If they do open for you, then we know it's a technical issue with Canvas. If they don't, then please email me and I will talk to tech support again and see what's going on. Because from my end, they're working just fine. And it's aggravating to me that it's not working for you. And I have no idea why that's the case. I have had people where last semester this did happen with somebody else, and the reason it happened was because their web security was really, I don't know what the term is. It was hyped up on the browser that they were using to access Canvas, and I went to a different browser and it was fine. I don't know if that has anything to
Okay.
do with it or not.
I can try
But
that.
yeah, if it's, so do what you can. And as I said, somebody else, please try it and see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, get a hold of me and I'll figure out what's going on. Okay, and then I want to share this with you. This is a critique that somebody did. It's called the peer critique. And this was done by somebody on one of the houses that were done for the semester that she was in. And I hope you guys can see this. I want to play it so you guys can hear it and just hear what she's doing as she goes through the critique.
I will be doing my artistic critique on Crystal.
Now I want to point out that what she did, what Taylor did, was do a Zoom or a Teams call with just herself present, and she did screen share, and then once she had the screen share up, she started recording, and that's what this is. And then she turned that, when she was all done, she emailed the recording to herself and then submitted it. And so there's a number of different ways to do this, but that seems to be one of the easiest.
Parkinson sculpture-based photography. So this right here is her house that she created. You can see it right there. My description of her house is that the house was built with lots of different materials. You can see the popsicle sticks that are used for the door in the flower boxes under the windows. The flowers in those flower boxes are actually small cotton puff balls with multiple different colors. She used tinfoil to create the cute little solar panels up there on the roof, and the roof itself appears to be made of some kind of plastic, maybe from a bag or something. I can't tell exactly, but it does appear plastic. I think the walls look as if paper, but I think that it is paper placed upon cardboard. My analysis is that the structure of this house appears to be made with a cardboard box that has been glued together, and then all the other materials were glued on top. Each of the popsicles had the bottoms cut off to all be the exact same size of the door. Similarly, with the popsicle sticks for the cotton ball flowers, they were each trimmed perfectly to fit and then hot glued together to create those little boxes we see. I cannot determine how the roof was built, but again, it looks as if plastic has been glued in different layers onto the cardboard roof. For the solar panels on top of that, it looks as if some form of squares were wrapped in tinfoil and then hot glued onto the plastic roof. My interpretation of this piece is that I believe this house was built to create a comforting feeling for the viewer. It is very welcoming with its simple childlike features. There's not too many details, but there still is lots of textures. The way this sculpture was photographed was intentional to make it look small and cozy. Every aspect of this house matches this theme very well. One of the photographs Crystal took was with a large giraffe stuffed animal. And the way that it was photographed with this giraffe looking down upon the house was very fun and playful and went along with the theme of childlike look very well. I would say that this piece was created to be very fun and unique. For example, the solar panels. That is something that I didn't see anybody else do, and I think it added a very fun aspect. My evaluation of this piece is that I think it was very successful. There were lots of fun textures and details that didn't let my eyes look away. There was always something new I could find that I didn't see before. It was a very fun piece that had lots of personality showing. It was photographed very well with lots of different angles and focuses. I know I'm only showing this one photo, but she took one that was a close-up that showed the textures very well. And like I had mentioned, the one with a giraffe was a very fun angle to show the size. As well as the angles and focuses, she did a great job with the location in each photo, and it added to the house instead of taking away. I can't think of anything I would change with this sculpture. It was very fun to look at and appears as if a lot of effort was put into making it as well as presenting it. Great work.
All right. What are some of the things that you noticed about her critique as she was doing that? And again, I'd like to hear from at least 2 or 3 different people.
In her language, very descriptive about what she was saying. So she was very intentional with her words and how she was describing the different elements of the house.
All right, excellent. Very good. That was something that I noticed as well, being very precise. What are some of the other things that you notice?
I feel like she was able to do her, like, give her opinion still, like what she enjoyed about it without it being, I like this, I love that. Like, she still was able to express herself and like what she was seeing and enjoying with the piece.
All right, excellent. Yeah, very good. And a third person. Sylvia or Camden, either one.
It looks like Camden typed something in the chat.
Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. I'm having a hard time seeing the chat because I've been looking at the transcript. I'm very sorry. Okay, Camden, very positive and insightful into the process. Yeah, very good. I really like the fact that you guys have picked all these things up. This is excellent. This is what I'm hoping for. So we're looking at those critiques. They are not a negative thing, and it gives an opportunity to precisely engage or use precise language and thinking to engage with the object that you're examining. And it's a very positive thing. And I think that that's wonderful. And I've had a little bit of pushback where people said, well, then it's not really a critique, but this is exactly a critique because again, critique and critical means with intent or on purpose. It doesn't mean hurtful. Our society implies that, but that's not what it means. And I'm glad you guys are able to pick that up with what Taylor was doing in her critique of somebody else's work. So, excellent. And I wanted to just visit this again. I'm sorry, I'm pausing and my eyes are moving around because I'm trying to share with you my screen, and I am not as adept at any 9-year-old doing this. So it takes a little bit of effort for me. Okay. So that's something to be mindful of as we move forward towards this. And again, the due date is August 2nd, but you do get extra credit if you do it early, and you get significant extra credit if you do it early. So think about that. This is going to be towards the end of the semester. You guys are going to be bogged down with other schoolwork. I would recommend you can do this at any time. I would say do it early and get it out of the way as soon as you can. Let's see, and right. So we talked about artistic critique. Now, next thing I want to do is talk about wire. And this is something where people are having a hard time seeing the images. And again, I don't I don't understand why it's doing that, because this is how the images show up with me.
I
So,
did switch my browser and they're working in a different browser. So it might just be me that's the
Okay,
issue,
all right.
not necessarily something on your end.
Okay, because I know that some browsers have like hyperactive steroidal security protocols that make it so that you can't see university photos sometimes. And it just, okay, I'm glad that works. With the volumetric form with line, we're going to talk about that a little bit now, and then we're going to talk about it more next week. The volumetric form with line, we are basically doing sketches in three-dimensional space using wire. And these examples, I am not expecting you guys to do stuff like this or like this. That's not what it is. This is what we are working towards. Doing scribble sketches essentially with the wire that we're using. The parameters for this is, it doesn't even have to look like an object. What it needs to do, look like an animal or something like that you can easily recognize. What it needs to do is be stable in three-dimensional space and describe three-dimensional space. And I want to show you some examples of the process. And I'm pretty sure, okay, this goes to the quiz. So give me just a little bit here. I don't know why my computer is loading so slowly today. And it's doing a lot of stuff where it's opening stuff up and then closing it again. I don't understand what's going on. So we're getting all the way down to here. We've got a quiz. We've got background information on the artist review, and then I'm getting to the wire sculpture. And here, the share your volumetric form with line. This one, notice that the point value is 5 points. This one, you're not writing anything. You're not critiquing anything. You're just sharing images of your wire sculpture. So we're going right to the wire sculpture and opening that up. Now, I know that all of you folks have done these kind of scribble drawings. And with the scribble drawings, what you're doing is basically by overlaying looping lines, we're trying to build up the idea of a form through essentially gestures, gestural lines on paper. I think that this rabbit is really pretty good. But to be honest, completely honest, all of them are pretty good for exactly what they are. You can tell that this is a bird. You can tell that this is a dog facing away from you. You can tell that this is a cat, and that's perfectly fine. So what you're going to be doing is basically making scribble sketches of a couple different ideas that you can do within wire, thinking about the wire. And even though they are not in your kits, I would recommend going to Harbor Freight and getting some cheap gloves to work with, because your hands are going to get dirty for one thing, but the end of the wire sometimes will poke at you too. So be careful with that. Now, this, I say, fitting in a cube 12 to 18 inches, that's when we have the wire access in the class. I'm thinking yours is probably going to be closer to 12 to 18 inches in volume, in size. And we are talking about a three-dimensional form. So these are examples of what other students have done. Now, I want you to look at this from a couple different perspectives. These are all pretty good examples of what we're looking for. Looking at this, the person has given or defined a three-dimensional form with the wire, and you can see his relationship to like a scribble sketch. They've made it so that it is stable. It's not going to flop around. And they use the wire in different ways to give different textures to it and different feelings to it. Like here on the teddy bear, you can see that with these little bits of wire here wrapped around, it almost looks like stitching. And here the arms are at the looser coils. It almost feels like sausage type floppy arms. With Popeye, You can see that they've done a couple different things. I'm saying it's Popeye just because we have that anchor right there. And I'm guessing this is a forearm. The legs, the feet, these are pretty much three-dimensional. The arms, not so much. They're kind of flat. The body's more three-dimensional. This is really kind of an interesting thing. Here we have the Moon Strider from what, the Jedi, what's it? No, The Empire Strikes Back. That's what it is. On the moon of Endor, I believe, something like that. And I think this area from right here down is a lot more successful than right here. It's all successful, but I think this is a little bit more successful because it feels a little bit more complete and tight. But this is something that you really have to gauge with how much wire you have access to. This, with looking at these two, I really like the bottom of this because there's a lot of stuff going on. And I like this. I don't like this as much because there's not a lot of stability and it doesn't really feel like it's fleshing the volume out. And here we have, it looks like a floppy dog, something like that. And the person has used wire to make this framing and then has used wire to kind of loop around the frame to give it a little bit of the body. I think that's really interesting. I love this. This fish is really interesting. The body of the fish is made with the wire. You can still feel what's going on. They varied how they used the wire, did different things with it, and it becomes kind of its own fun thing. This was really huge. It was about 2 feet long. And again, with the wire that you have, I don't think you're going to be able to build anything that big. That doesn't matter. I think if it's about the size of an average person's head, I think that will be great. And I want you to go through, look at the examples of the different artists that are involved, see the kinds of things that they do. What is not successful is Picasso and a couple other artists have done wire portraits of people where it's just flat and they're drawing with the wire. That's not what we're doing. We're making a three-dimensional form in space. What I've seen, some people that will take and make leaves out of the wire, and that by itself is, it's flat, doesn't do anything. But when you put several of the leaves together and kind of bend them so they come out from a central stalk at different angles, that transforms it, and then using the wire to make some sort of a floral type idea at the top of the stems, that starts becoming interesting. But again, this is something that needs to stand by itself. It needs to have identifiable volume. It needs to kind of look like those scribble drawings in 3D, and it needs to be stable. So something that, and I've had this happen where somebody will make something out of wire, they'll actually film it when they set it down and walk away, and then take the one image from the film where it appeared to be stable before it flopped over. And that's really not going to work. Or hanging this from a wall or anything like that. When you photograph it, it really needs to be stable, just like the house is stable, pretty much. So what I would like you to, and you can reuse the wire if it's not working out. You can also add other bits of wire. One thing that is interesting that other people have done is to augment. They didn't have an awful lot of wire, but to augment it, what they actually did is mix glue with water in a 1-to-1 ratio and soak some string in it and wrap some balloons. So they got some of that scribble texture with the string. When it dried, you pop the balloon and incorporate that into your wire sculpture. And that becomes really fascinating. So with this, I would recommend doing it, turning it in, and then looking at what I write. If you're not very sure how to do it, you please make sure that you know that if you don't get full points, look at what I've written, turn around and turn it back in, after you rework it. I have no problem with you guys redoing stuff after I've talked about it. I prefer you did that. So I know that that is going to be a bit more of a challenge because most of you are very comfortable with two-dimensional work. The wire is going to require just a little bit of being, or sometimes quite a bit of being outside your comfort zone. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because we're going to go over it again next week as well. Anybody have any questions? Are we all good?
Yeah, can it be any freestanding object or does it have to be an animal?
It doesn't have to be an animal. We have an example there, somebody using Star Wars toys. Somebody else is doing shoes. I think this is most successful when it is a recognizable object. Like if you're going to use a toy of some sort or something like a hat or another object like that. One person, actually several people have made hot air balloon models. That works out, that can look really good. I just, rather than stressing yourself about making it realistic, I want you to concentrate on using the wire to create a form that is closer akin to your scribble drawing that you've made or your gestural drawing as you made to get to start generating ideas. So try not to force yourself into struggling with identifiable, realistic looking animals. If that's something that is outside of your comfort zone, don't worry about that too much. One of the most successful ones was a teddy bear, or the floppy dog toy. Those are really great. So does anybody have any other questions? That was a really good question. Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Are you guys good with that? Okay, the two other things I want to talk about tonight, well, there's three other things. One is the artist researcher service learning. We have one person so far who's opted in for the service learning. As soon as when other people pick service learning, I will take you off of the due list for the artist research option. And then you won't be able to do those assignments. You will only be able to do the service learning assignments. And the other thing is also true. If you're doing research rather than service learning, you're not going to be able to turn in any service learning assignments. You will only be responsible for the artist research assignments. So everybody has to decide if they're going to do artist research or service learning. And several people have done that. And once you do that, it tells me to remove the assignments that you should not be responsible for. So that's an important thing to do coming up. And I think that is due Saturday or Sunday, deciding that. Then we've already talked about the artistic critique and an example. I want to mention the annotated bibliography, but for that, I want to talk a little bit more about the diversity coordinator, because our collaborator. I talked about that last time a bit, and I wanted to touch on it some more. Let's see, here we go. All right, and I don't know, I apologize. I don't know what kind of language I'm supposed to be using now with the most recent House bill addressing these kinds of issues in a university setting. I do like the term diversity. I like equanimity. I like a lot of these kinds of things. One thing that I think it's important to realize as an artist is that there are always opportunities for connecting with audiences. Audiences are wide and diverse. If you work next to somebody who does a different kind of art than you do, or has a different voice than your voice, it does not impede on your ability to make a living as an artist. It doesn't threaten you at all. It shouldn't threaten you. It just means that they have a different voice and they're doing things differently. I'm going to present an idea of definition of art. And you may or may not agree with it. And I don't honestly care that much because it's the definition that I'm using for this class. And it's what you'll be responsible for during this class and outside of the class and the rest of your life. I don't really care what you do with it. Art is a difficult thing for a lot of people to define because it feels like it's something that you know it when you see it. Several years ago, I came across an essay by Albert Dürer. He was a German Dutch dry point etcher. He was an incredible artist a few hundred years ago. And one of the things he talked about was the pillars of art. And he describes the pillars of art being applying intent to doing something, using correct proportions, making sure things are in balance, making sure that things are appropriate to the setting and the purpose of the art. But one thing that he said that he thought was the most important pillar, something that has always struck with me, and I think that it does serve to separate out art from just making, the process of making stuff. And that is inviting something. An important element of art is when it's created while you invite something beyond your present self to help. And that can be your higher order self, that can be your subconscious, that can be, you can label it God, universe, shared consciousness, the morphic field, shared subconscious. There's lots of different kinds of things, but what it comes down to is stepping away from our ego-driven selves and allowing us to get into ourselves to get in that state of flow to make something. And this making can be anything. It doesn't matter. It can be growing potatoes in a field. It can be teaching a kindergarten class. It could be cooking dinner for somebody. It can be making dessert, baking cookies, knitting. But it could also be going on a walk. It could be going out to Banff just to watch sunrises. Any activity that you get into where you have achieved that flow state and you come to your senses after a certain amount of time, you realize that both your legs are asleep, or you are really hungry and you've forgotten to eat all afternoon because you were working on that project. You're concentrating so much that you completely ignore the passage of time. Those are evidences that you have reached outside of your ego-driven self. And that's what art is. Art is, for the intents and purposes of this class, art is the process or the evidence of the process of that kind of activity where you are achieving the flow state, whatever that activity is. You could be playing music, you could be doing accounting. It doesn't matter. And this is something that I think is a really good indicator that an individual has reached personhood, has become a human being. And in that case, when we put this next to this idea of diversity, we think for a minute the universe is billions of years old, and from one point of view, you could very well make the argument that the universe has spent those billions of years putting us exactly where we are right now and making us the individual that we are right now. And of course, what that means is that everybody is the individual that they need to be right now. And if we think about that a little bit, and if art is part of the process of achieving personhood, it's indicative that you are a human being, then everybody should have a right to create art. And if that's the case, and the universe feels that they're important as well, listening and supporting those voices that are different than ourselves in no way should make us feel challenged at all, because every voice is not just important to hear, but it's vital to what we hear. And I think that that's kind of the introduction to this whole idea of being a diversity collaborator. We're not looking for opportunities to shock people by being different. what we are doing is looking for opportunities to help and support people who are trying to engage those creative aspects of themselves as well. Like when Whitley is having her daughter help with her art project, drawing on the side of the house. We will be talking about this next week, and I want people to go through this and read this section, what I've written, and then also really think about that. It's a shorter module, but I think it's important, and I think it's important to address it at the beginning. And I think it ties in quite a bit to that more positive stance we're taking as we apply artistic critique. There are some ground rules as we will go into this discussion next week. One is, I don't want anybody to feel that they have the obligation of being the spokesmodel of whatever group they are in. And this could be the group of tall people. This could be the group of people like myself who have boring haircuts. It could be whatever group. People should not have to feel they need to defend or justify their existence. All of us should only feel that we need to define our existence. We need to find out who we are. And so it's important to try to, when we have these kinds of discussions about diversity and inclusion and collaboration, we need to make sure that human beings are products of intersectionality, not any specific groups. And there are no, unless you are hired by, the International Association of whatevers, you're not going to be the nobody should expect you to be the spokesmodel of them, whatever that group is. If that's over 80 architects or people that carve wood, it doesn't matter what the group is. And I think that the second ground rule for this discussion coming up will be that all of us need to realize that our voice, as well as every voice around us, is not just important, but it's vital. That's what makes art valuable, that everybody has a voice and that we admire, respect, or at least honor everybody's validity to voice. And I think the third one is really important here. As fellow artists, all of us celebrate the art that everybody else does as well. True art is never jealous. There's no room for jealousy. There's no room for anger, hatred, and negativity in the production of art, because art is about creation. So those are some things that are really important to remember. Now I do talk about racism, and critical race theory, because as you can tell from the title, we are talking about diversity. Now, I did mention this last week. Race, in the way that we kind of understand it today, we talk about it today, did not show up on anybody's radar until newspaper publications in the 18th century. And a big part of that is because landowners were noticing, some landowners in the colonies were noticing that the indentured servants, who basically sold themselves into slavery in many situations, came over with the opportunity to actually work themselves free of their servitude. They were becoming friends with the indigenous people and the Black Africans, who were also, they didn't have an opportunity to sell themselves into slavery. They were sold as cattle. The biggest difference being that particularly Black Africans, their children were automatically part of the slavery system as well. And we also see that in some communities with the indigenous Americans that were captured and sold into slavery. In order to keep, it appears, and I'm saying it appears because it seems to fit with how things developed later on. It appears that there were landowners that were concerned about indentured servants, indigenous slaves, and African slaves becoming friendly with each other. And that's when wedges started to be driven about how people looked. And that's when race started to develop as an issue. So our understanding of race today, based on the color of somebody's skin, is based on a fiction, manufactured fiction. The situation itself is very real, but it was based on somebody coming up with ideas that justified a mistreatment of an entire sector of the human population with the only markers that they had available to them, to use as an indicator for the focal point of their hatred. And I think it's pretty horrible, pretty despicable. As we go into that module, what I need everybody to do is find an example when art has been used as a dividing point, and find an example of art as it's been used as a collaborating point or positive point, or a moment where people are able to come together. And then we're going to talk about those aspects. And then after our discussion, as you add other elements to the discussion, you're going to be talking about how perhaps your perspective has changed. So, watch those videos about critical race theory and how racism has developed. What is really fascinating to me about this kind of uncomfortable discussion is I'm a pluralist chaplain, which means I'm a chaplain with training to help people in many spiritual traditions, many different spiritual traditions. And I have been a scholar of world religions for about 40 years. And what is fascinating to me is as we go deeper and deeper into the belief systems that cultures develop, we find that there are fewer and fewer things that divide us from each other, to the point where the division points have become almost arbitrary. And then the more we focus on the things that divide us, the more people pull away from the spiritual traditions of their cultures, which I think is really interesting. I wanted to walk through a little bit of what this is again. My dividing point of art, I mentioned last week, was about the racial profiling that was done by the Soviet police in the 1950s, where they had 18 races. And what's interesting to me about this is that this outline of the skull is essentially the same on all of them. The only real difference is how the eyes look, whether they're scowling or not, and the hairstyles. And the Soviet police this was their tool to find out who were the criminals. And then I mentioned the thing to bring people together, to where art is being used to unite, was with the Ottoman era. The Ottoman rulers would employ people of many different backgrounds to be the artists and contributors to the society. In Umayyad Spain, from about the 8th century to about the 11th century, 12th century, for so a good 300, 400 years, it was interesting to me because not only did they understand about things like infections, and there's even some evidence to show that they were, medical science was talking about things like transfusions. This is 1,000 years ago. What's interesting is that the highest ranking person in the land in this Muslim government was a Jewish doctor who was the Surgeon General. And three very different, three religions that elsewhere in the world were at each other's throats, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, were getting along really well. And at the same time period in Syria, you would have architects who would build these beautiful buildings so that they would feel like they were belonging in the same society. But one building was a mosque, one was a synagogue, and one was a chapel. They'd be facing each other in the center of a city. And there's evidence to show that artists from each tradition would work on the other buildings from the other religious traditions, and they would clean up and support each other in their holidays and Sabbaths. So there are examples of people around architecture and art supporting each other quite a bit. We're going to have our discussion, and I'd like as many people who can come next week as possible. But whether or not you can come, I want you to watch it and watch this earlier discussion and participate as much as you can. If you are not on it live, then I want you to respond to some of these ideas as much as you can in the discussion itself, and then write a reflection. Submit a 3-paragraph reflection on the different things. So everybody will be submitting an example, and you can write about or talk about your example of art as a tool to divide. Another example is art as a tool to unite. Then you're going to reflect on the discussion and what we talk about, and then you're going to write a 3-paragraph reflection on your thoughts over the whole thing. So that's what we'll be doing next week. Does that make sense to everybody? I know it can be a sensitive topic, but we're artists. We deal with sensitivity all the time. And gosh darn it, I'm the most sensitive person in the room. Actually, that's not true at all. So I want you to go through that, and we are going to be talking about that next week. And then the discussion is due on the 22nd, but I think it's probably going to be more likely people are going to be working on that after we have our class discussion. But as many people as possible, submit at least those first 2 portions where art, an example of art as a uniter and art as a divider. And we'll talk about that. And then after the discussion is when you'll submit your reflection. So is that clear for everybody? Whitley, Sylvia, Camden?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so it looks like Camden typed in the chat again.
Okay. Maybe a weird question, but is it possible to use the same piece for both dividing and uniting? If you're going to do that, I think that would be, I hope you show up on the live discussion, because if you're going to do that, I want you to be able to talk about how it is both, because I think that'd be really fascinating. A good example of that would be comic books in 1940s and 50s. Comic books were used like the Howling Commandos was a comic book contemporary to Captain America, and they were made up of a cross section of all the immigrants that came to the U.S. to fight in the Allies. And so, and if you see, if you've watched the first Avenger, Captain America, the first Avenger, it introduces you to the Howling Commandos, and you meet several of the people in there, and that's straight out of the comic books. But then also the people that they fought against, they would use incredible racial stereotyping and caricature to demonstrate what all of the fascist Italians look like, or what all the fascist Japanese look like, or what all the fascist, what all the Nazis look like. And so, in the same comic book, you would have art being used as a divider, or a divisive tool, as well as art being used as a uniting tool. So, that's a good question, Camden. And I'm sure that you'll be able to find other examples too. And media, it doesn't matter what media, there's going to be media that is used as a divider or a uniter as well. So yeah, excellent question. And I think the last thing I wanted to mention was the annotated bibliography. You see, I opened that up. It's module 7B. And we don't have a lot of time to cover it right now, so we'll talk more about it next week. And if you guys feel you need more time as you get into it, tell me next week. But what the annotated bibliography is, you guys have all picked an artist. What you're going to be doing is finding resources for more research on that artist if you're doing the artist research route. If you're not, if you're doing the service learning route, it's going to be different. With the service learning route, the people that have chosen that have already been asking me, well, how can I find out who I can work with? That's what these sections are going to be covering. So, who can I work with? It does give you some links with resources right here through the UVU Center for Social Impact. They are an excellent resource. And so that will help you a little bit in that. And then the other aspect of the service learning is going to be, what will my project look like? And that's where after contacting them, you're going to be describing what you hope your project looks like. Now, realistically, I want you to be able to start this, but you're probably not going to be able to turn it in if you're doing service learning until people start getting back to you. And so, keep that in mind if you're doing the service learning. For artist research, if you guys need an extra week, I want you to tell me and let me know. Some semesters, everybody can do it really fast. Other semesters, it takes a little bit more time. What an annotated bibliography is you're going to look up 5 sources of the artists that you picked in module 7.A. You've picked an artist that it is different from you in some aspects, but his work resonates with you. And then what you're going to be doing is finding those 5 sources, accessing those 5 sources, and then writing a MLA format bibliography for those sources, and then writing 2 paragraphs about each of those sources. And I have an example right here of how this would look like. I'm just using Al Farrell as an artist. He's from that list. He's the person who does reliquaries out of ammunition and weapons. So this is one article that is about him. This is an interesting article that is actually taken from a magazine publication. And what I did is, if you look right here, you see these several different I'm sorry, my brain just skipped a cog. Several different links to different websites that are free to use, where you can essentially plug in the URL of the source that you're using. Whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it's an article that you found, whether it's in a photo essay that you found online, it doesn't matter. You can plug that in to one of these 5 links, and it will render for you the MLA citation. And what you'll need to do is follow this format for writing up your annotated. Annotation just means you write notes. So this is my first out of my 5 citations. And I have this done in proper MLA format. Can everybody see that? It starts with Al Farrell, goes all the way down to the date of publication 2015. After that, there's a period, and then each citation needs this phrase, accessed on, and then the date you accessed it. That is vitally important for a couple reasons. The biggest one is that's the correct way to do it. Second is, with that archive.org site that everybody has access to, you can use that to go back and find what a particular website looked like at any moment after the website was first put on the internet. That's important because links will change. I know, if you have your own website, you revamp it all the time. You add stuff to it, you take stuff away. So having the access on phrase will let either your future self or somebody who comes after you find this exact citation, because they can plug this information in, go to one of the Wayback Machines or Internet Archive websites and look at it on that date that you accessed it, and they will see what you saw and what you read. So that's important for the citation. Then for the annotation, you're going to have two paragraphs. One is a summary paragraph and one is a reflection paragraph. The summary paragraph is going to be where you're describing this source. If it's a video, if it's for a gallery piece, whatever, this is from an exhibition catalog, this first paragraph is going to be a summary of that. And then the second paragraph is going to be your reflection on it. What did you learn about it? What does it tell you about the artist? Why are you glad that you saw it? And the way that you will organize this is the first letter of the properly formatted in MLA formatting citation, and you're going to do it alphabetical. So your articles may have a number ahead of it, whatever. The letters, it needs to be alphabetical. And that's how you organize each of these. And the way it will look like when you turn it in is you're going to have first citation alphabetically organized, two paragraphs after it, second citation alphabetically organized with two paragraphs after it, or an alphabetical sequence, all that with all 5 of your citations. Notice on this, it does not have the URL. When you go to this, you do have an option for including the URL in the MLA citation format. If you choose to do that, that's fine. Just make sure you use the same format for all 5 citations. I also teach this in for another class where the students are just being introduced to this kind of idea. And I have had some really weird stuff come out of it. But I am confident that you guys know your ABCs. I am confident that you are able to do this because all of you have already had classes where you've had to write different things, summing up ideas. For example, your artist statement and stuff like that. You're not going to be doing artist statement. You're just doing this, and you're repeating each of these 5 times. Now, can anybody tell me what source you cannot use for your citation and annotations?
Is it AI?
What is it? What's that?
AI.
That is a really good example. I think AI, and I believe I have this in the syllabus. I think you guys should use AI to help you do your writing, but I do not ever turn in anything that is written solely by AI. You need to look at that, and I use AI for a lot of my writing to help me. I use it to flesh things out. I use it to organize thoughts, and then I'll go back and rewrite it in my own language, in my own voice. And that's what I would like you to do. If you're going to use AI, a really good giveaway for me is, I'm sorry, I have no opinion because I'm a machine language program. I've actually had students turn in stuff like that, but you can use the AI and then, use that and then rewrite the summary and then write your own reflection. And that's fine. I think, but that is a really good point to bring up. Thank you for bringing that up. The one source I don't want anybody to use is Wikipedia. Does anybody know why you should not use Wikipedia as a source when you're submitting research? There's absolutely no gatekeeping. Anybody who has access to the internet can write a Wikipedia article. What that means is that there's no way of really knowing if it's original information or if it's even information that you can access. But what is the best part of the Wikipedia article that you can use?
You can use the sources at the bottom.
Yes, exactly. Perfect, Camden. That is exactly right. What I will do sometimes if I'm trying to find out about an artist, I'll look up them on Wikipedia. Just like Camden said, I'll go all the way down to the bottom and go through and look at each of the sources. And that's exactly the right way to use Wikipedia. That's perfect. There's a couple things to be mindful of as you do your research. One is, have you ever heard of the term confirmation bias? This is something that every search engine uses, particularly with social media. If you use something like Google and you access it with your email, or you don't clear out the cookies so it knows all of your previous searches, just like every social media search engine, like Facebook or YouTube, unless you log out, it will show you. It's designed to show you what it thinks you want to see. And arguably, when we're doing artists, that's probably not going to be a big deal. But if you are trying to research forest fires, and you're like me, and your search engine knows you're a tree-hugging hippie, it's going to show you how terrible industries are in causing forest fires. It's not going to be a very fair set of research data, because those search engines will show you what it thinks you want to see. And so be mindful of that. If you feel like your information is getting skewed one side or another, log out of whatever search engine you have, get rid of the cache memory, and then use a search engine that you don't have to log into. And if you're able to get rid of your search history and do that, that's going to be a little bit better or a little bit more useful info set to research with. The other is be mindful of who's the author, who's supplying the information. Again, if you're doing a research paper on, say, pollution, do you think the article that you get from Greenpeace International is going to read differently than the article you're going to get about the same subject that's written or supported by BP Oil? Do you think they're going to give you the same information? Anybody? Well, I'm hoping that nobody's responding because the mics are broken. Well, say, no, you have to be mindful of who's saying the information, because it will reflect the perspective of whoever's writing it or whoever's paying for the article. So be mindful of that. There's something else going on too, where with the internet and articles updating, you have to be mindful of the idea that sometimes people will take content, give it a different title, shift the paragraphs around, use AI on it, and then republish it as their own original content. And so if you find a couple articles about an artist and you see the same phrases appearing out in the different articles, try to find other things. And I would like, when you do this, when you do your annotated bibliography, it would be really fun to look up a gallery that talks about them. Look up maybe the artist's website, and look up a couple YouTube videos on them. Blending those together would be really good. All right, we will talk about that more next week, for sure. But next week we will specifically, and I hope you guys can all make it, and we will be talking about being a diversity collaborator as artists, and we will talk about some of the other things. And hopefully I'll be able to, and I will share with you more photos of other houses that people have done, because I think that those are looking really good. Okay, does anybody have any questions? That's all I have for you tonight. Does anybody have any questions that I can go over?
I have a question. I think I'm the one who wants to do the service-based learning project.
Okay.
If it's something that wouldn't be able to happen until the next school year, because like school's almost out, for elementary school kids and we had a plan to implement it, like would that still work or do we actually have to complete the service?
There is a certain amount of time requirement, and I'm wondering if that's what you need to do, maybe the time is going into developing the concrete plan.
Okay.
And if it's something where you can generate aids, like for example, demonstration videos, where the camera's over your shoulder and watching your hands as you walk through whatever it is that you're doing, I think that could fit.
Okay.
And I think that your challenge is probably going to be being able to work with people in the school system and coordinating time schedules so that
Right.
you're able to get it done. Yeah, that's.
I mean, I'm on the PTA at my daughter's school, and so like I kind of have an in with the people who run the programs.
Good.
So like, but she's going to be in 7th grade next year, so I won't be at the elementary school next year with her. But I have like friends on the board and everything, so I have one idea. I just didn't know if like we actually had to complete the project or if I've got a pretty solid plan and then plan on completing it once school starts up again in August. Like if that would be something that would work for it.
Well, I think it depends. If you can skew your project so it can provide a deliverable that doesn't require working directly with the students.
Okay.
What is the project idea that you have?
So they usually do like some kind of art week at the school. Anyway, like where the kids learn about different artists. So I wanted to help implement a student art show where like people could come look at the art because usually they just like talk about it. They don't actually like display it or anything. And so I wanted to make something like I wanted to make like a separate art thing and then maybe come up with something different for each grade, like get the 6th graders into photography or something because I know they don't do that there and maybe collages for the younger grades like kind of expand not just like everything beyond markers and like coloring a picture like kind of give them more opportunities to like be creative.
Okay, let me for summer 2024, I'm trying to find out what our last date is. The semester ends on August 9th.
Okay.
And that might be out of the ballywhack, but I am wondering if if you're going to be doing different things, maybe doing something where you have videos demonstrating each of the activities that you're talking about, and you do all the coordination so that they basically can set it up without you there.
Yeah, I mentioned it to one girl and she said she was planning on just making me come back and run it anyway because like I volunteered so much last year, so she was like, I'm just gonna bring you back next year to do this. So I mean it's just one of the ideas I had. I mean it might not work logistically, but the people I have at the school seemed on board with it. So it's definitely something that could move forward, but I have some other ideas as well if this one doesn't work out. So
okay, because what I am thinking is, since it has to take place within the semester, if you can fulfill the time requirement by doing everything preparatory to it,
okay,
then and get it all ready, so it basically just has a couple pins left, then that would satisfy the requirement.
Okay.
But if the time, a big chunk of that time needs to be you actually being there, then we'll have to talk more and figure out something else.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's a great idea. But either way, we will figure it out. That sounds exciting.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Whitley. Sylvia, Camden, and Lynette, do you guys have any questions?
No. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Great. Camden, thank you. Sylvia, Lynette, you guys? You're both good?
Sylvia's chat said no.
Okay. All right. I see that now. Thank you. How about you, Lynette? Oh, you know what? I keep getting a thing. I don't know if you guys have been participating more or less than I expected, but I keep getting something that flashes up saying poor network quality. So there is something going on with my computer. But that's all I've got for today. And yeah, Willie, that was an excellent question. Thank you for that. And if anybody has any other things that we can address next time, email me. If you have any concerns or questions about any of the assignments, do the same, and we will talk about it. And some of our discussion today was directed by emails that people had sent me. So I really appreciate your involvement. Thank you so much for being part of this today. And I will talk with you guys next week. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Nobody gets sick. Everybody has a great time. So we'll
Thank
see you
you.
guys next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Sorry I wasn't able to
Thank you.
participate. I can't.